Good afternoon, Team KDE. Welcome to the Team KDE meeting, July 22nd, 2020. For those of you who are not able to attend virtually or live, especially those at our state schools, the area technology centers, KSB and D, please know that we value your hard work and appreciate your contributions. And just as in the past, our team meeting and the PowerPoint will be archived for your viewing at a later date, and it will be archived in SharePoint. It's been, seems like quite a long time since we've gathered together as a team, both in person and virtually. Certainly, seems a very long time since we gathered the last time in person and before we had any idea of what was to come. And a lot has changed. A lot has changed since that time when we had even our last virtual meeting in May. And I miss seeing all of you, even though we see each other's virtual faces. Throughout all these teams meetings that we're doing. It's not the same, as you all know, as walking down through the Sauer building and saying hello and stopping to talk to people about their weekend and their family. And so, as I've said before, I encourage you all to find alternative ways to have those connections. So make sure you're texting and calling people and continuing to have those relationships, even though it's not around the water cooler at work. And we hope that we will soon be back together. We know we've had what we're calling a soft opening at the 300 Sauer building. I think we have around maybe 20 individuals that decided that they were going to come back at least for a few days a week beginning July 15th. That is available to you. You can talk to your supervisor if you're interested in that. However, until further notice, we are still going to permit everyone to telecommute, telework. I have briefed Dr. Glass on that and have made sure he knew that that is working really well for us. And I know that decreases your anxiety about you can do your work but being a safe environment of your home, and you don't have to worry about getting out or getting your temperature checked and having the mask on. And so I think that's important, at least for the short term, or even maybe as we go on into the school year, that we continue that. We've shown that as if any state agency can show how to do telework and telecommuting, it's been us. And I want to thank you all for all that hard work. And as you all know, all that hard work has resulted in over 15 guidance documents that you have created. And that's no small feat. Put that guidance up, the quality of it, against any state in the country. And one of the reasons that I think Dr. Glass will probably share with you, I don't want to steal any of his thunder, but that's one reason that he has described to me as to why it was so attractive to come back to Kentucky, is the reputation that this agency has at a national level. So that's because of all the hard work that you all do day to day. And of course, in addition to the guidance documents and everything COVID related, you've been doing the regular work of the department. And sometimes I think we just haven't talked about that. And we need to know that that still is happening, and that has to happen. And a lot of that is federally required. And I think it's very important that we honor your work and your sacrifice. And so I want to thank you for that. We're going to continue even as we shift to a new commissioner on September 14th, guiding, providing support to our districts so that they can in turn educate, feed, and support the Commonwealth students. And as you know, those have been the three words that we've used to guide our work. And I think we have seen the great results of that. And the guidance documents that I mentioned earlier, I want to point out that we also have been able to have those in the top 5 languages spoken in Kentucky schools and in Chinese. So I believe 6 languages total. Want to thank Jefferson County Public Schools, their team, for helping us translate those, in addition to, I believe, the University of Kentucky translated the Chinese version. So that's very important. It's also important that all of our documents are not only translated, but all the documents that we produce need to be in an accessible format for those with disabilities as well. And we've been doing a really good job of that over the last few years. So keep up that great work. About a month ago, I asked you to submit some photos of hobbies and things that you have been doing. We know we all have hobbies even before COVID, but you have more time to do hobbies because if you commuted, for example, and you may have an extra 2 hours on your hands if you had an hour commute each way, and so your hobbies may have really taken off. And we know we've not been traveling like we have in the past, so we have those pictures. It looks like we're starting off with a picture of me. As you all know, Sean and I have been spending most of the COVID era at our family farm in Garrett County, and it has been a treat to be here. It's enabled me to focus and to be outside. That's a picture from in the earlier this spring, and you can see we have calves there, and they were very inquisitive on that day. So, Tony, you want to go through some of the pictures?
Yes, I'm sorry. These are the ones that we received in addition to the comments on the conversations with the commissioner on the 16th. Can you see are you all able to see my screen? I'm hoping.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Good deal. So as you can see there on the left, Elisa Hanley, Division of District Support, shared with us that she was putting in a pool for her family. So she shared with us the work that she did on the left, and then her daughter enjoying the work there. She also began to paint the base of a mural for her oldest daughter to detail, and started doing some diamond painting work on the bottom right. John Pays in Division of Educator Recruitment and Development shared that he was working on practicing his instrument there. And then I shared some of the stuff that I have been working on in my spare time. So a lot of people didn't share pictures, but shared that they were working on just lots of activities with their family and children, making masks, which I know a lot of our families and those in the districts, school districts will appreciate.
Well, I encourage all of you. We know that we need to be healthy. Being healthy at home also means taking care of yourself. Obviously, not just wearing a mask, not just staying at home and when you can, and not being out as much, but it means taking care of your emotional health, your mental health, and part of that is being able to have outlets such as hobbies. And so please continue that, and feel free to keep sharing your pictures with us, and we will share with the entire team at an appropriate time. I just read yesterday the state fair. I don't believe the state fair this year, maybe the first time in history, will not be having individual entries. It looks like we could have had some blue ribbons there from KDE staff on some of the. You can submit almost anything if you've ever been to the state fair. An adult, even in the adult categories, you can submit all kinds of things that you didn't even know maybe a hobby that existed. So, Tony, we may have to have our own little online state fair submission here to showcase all of this talent.
No, there was definitely that conversations with Commissioner back in, it was like I think it was in beginning of June. A lot of people had shared, lots of talent. So I know we've had a lot happen since, that early June. So yes, I'd love to be able to share more pictures in our next TeamKDE meeting. So please send them my way.
It's always amazing because you see your colleagues' talents at work, and maybe they're a really good accountant, maybe they're a really good lawyer, maybe they're really good and they really know their special ed policy, but then we also know they're good at so many other things. And that's always, sometimes we need to pay more attention to, I think, talking about and sharing what we do in our off time. Before we get into talking about the SEA awards and celebrating those, I want to give a shout out, and this again is referencing back to the work that goes on at the department in addition to all the added work related to COVID. I want to give a shout out to those that contributed to the efforts related to the 2020 federal audit with U.S. Department of Education. This involves staff from across all offices, and this work really deserves special recognition. The time that it takes to do this, it is thankless, and to be able to submit that information. And I appreciate your leadership and your hard work in getting this done. It may appear to be thankless, but it shouldn't be, because without this, we would not be receiving federal money. And we have to have federal funds in Kentucky, particularly in our state as a relatively poor state. It's essential that we have these federal funds and that they continue to flow. And your work on that audit ensures that that can happen in an uninterrupted way. So I really want to thank you for that. And then I also want to congratulate Laura Reganis. She was honored yesterday as part of the Kentucky Society of Technology and Education, their Making It Happen Award, or Making IT Happen Award, during the virtual EdTech webcast. And we believe Associate Commissioner Couch, as he loves to do, did a really good job of surprising her, although I think she was starting to catch on. David, do you want to say a few words about Laura?
I would. And if you give me ability to share, Tony, I'd like to share something up on the screen if I could.
Sure. Let me make sure yep, go ahead.
All right, thanks. So Kevin knows I do like to give totally blindsided recognition to the staff that we have. And this yesterday is from my Facebook post, but the Kentucky Society for Technology and Education is really all the education technology leaders and CIOs across Kentucky. They once a year select someone to represent Kentucky. Every state does this, and picks a person that for their Making It Happen award. And what's really special about this is we had our school district folks pick someone from the Department of Education. They can pick anyone, obviously, to do this, and within districts is commonly, but they pick someone within the Department of Education. Originally, this was supposed to happen back in March, early March, but something happened on March 13th when we're supposed to give this award. Actually, before that is March 12th, we had to stop the technology conference that was in Louisville. So we had Laura's husband all lined up to be a surprise recipient, but we had to put it off. So what we did yesterday was we had a webcast that we do across Kentucky every month for the education technology leaders and surprise Laura. And you see a picture here of Marianne Rankin from Boone County Schools, who leads the Making IT Happen Award. And Laura here is off to the right-hand side, and appreciated Kevin participating in that, because he likes to be part of this surprise awards too. So it's just not me. He's enjoyed it and helped us out with something else earlier in the year. But something about Laura, and I appreciate Tony, you and your team with the tweet they put out and the article in Kentucky Teacher. But Laura, the reason she's beloved and known throughout the state, and usually folks just know her by her first name, it's kind of like Cher. You don't have to even say Laura's last name. They know who Laura is. She helped establish Kentucky's first IT academy. And these are certificates that are given that are very marketable in the private sector once we leave. And Microsoft would even tell you it was the best one that they had out of the states that had an IT academy. And we have more girls that code clubs in Kentucky than any other state in America. And there's a lot of other states a lot bigger than us, but Laura was a part of that. And lately she's been part of being a champion. Obviously that comes into play here, Kevin, with all the virtual and remote teaching and learning that's occurring. But she works with our digital learning coaches that we have and representatives we have in every district. And even before the COVID-19 situation happened, our digital learning team, which made a variety of folks, including Laura, was already asked to come in by the superintendent and their staff, chief academic officer, education technology leaders, to come in, just not for an hour, but for days, to work with their teachers on how to maximize technology in the classroom, but also in the distance and remote learning kind of capacity. So it was very appropriate that this award was given to her, and I really like that we got to highlight her, and we got a couple pictures of her here, and Laura's very behind the scenes, and but Laura, I don't know if you want to say a word or two to folks, and I thought the article did a good job capturing Laura's comments. But Laura, I'm going to make you show your video here. So let's see you, Laura.
He has a way of trying to embarrass me, doesn't he? But well, thank you so much. It's definitely an honor to get to work at KDE and our fabulous team, but also fortunate to get to work directly with our digital learning coaches across the state who are directly impacting our students. And that's what we're all about. So it's an honor to be recognized for that. And so thank you very much.
Marty, I know she's part of your team. We're very proud of Marty, but you have a variety of teams, a variety of members doing this, and she's just one member. But I know you wanted to say something too.
We're just super blessed at KDE to have Laura part of our team. And if you've gotten a chance to work with her, you know that she has that teacher touch, that leader touch, and the ability to communicate really difficult things. She's super smart and just a joy to work with. And so if you've not got a chance to work with Laura before, then you need to sprint as fast as you can to do that. So thank you so much.
Kevin, she was helpful to you and the board when we first doing the virtual meetings and virtual board meetings that you recognized yesterday. So I appreciated those words as well. Thank you for letting me highlight Laura.
Thank you. And I'd have to say that now my other screen is blowing up. I've never been compared to Cher. So it's blowing up over here. Thank you.
Congratulations, Laura.
Thank you, Laura. And this is a great segue into our SCA awards. As I mentioned when Laura received her award yesterday, because of the work Laura and others have done over the years, we've really built the foundation that enabled us to pivot quickly to non-traditional instruction. And that is due in no small part to our efforts over almost 30 years now with the Office of Education Technology and other parts of the department. And oftentimes, as was mentioned, those are individuals working behind the scenes, but we're really able to see the benefits of all of that work over all these years and building those foundations and building all that capacity, and not just OET and in technology, but in other areas. And I would say every area of the department, we have been really able to respond and do it quickly. Doesn't mean it's been easy, but I believe we had that foundation in place, and that was very important. So we'll move on to the SCA awards. As everyone may know, and if you're a new employee, you may not know, but I'll briefly describe them. These awards recognize employees that are going above and beyond their duties in contributing to the agency's mission and vision. They honor our coworkers that have been working towards improving our 3 strategic priorities: student outcomes, strategic partnerships, and operational excellence. And then, of course, during COVID, we have added, I guess, a kind of a mini mission of educate, feed, and support. And so those 3 words are also directly related to those 3 strategic priorities. The KDE vision is each and every student empowered and equipped to pursue a successful future. The Kentucky Board of Education mission is to partner with districts, schools, families, students, business and industry, and communities to provide leadership and support to ensure success for each and every student. And then, of course, our strategic priorities, as mentioned, student success, meaning students demonstrate improved performance on multiple measures. Strategic partnerships, meaning that key stakeholders work collaboratively to improve outcomes for students in the community. And operational excellence, meaning that KDE possesses processes, maintain excellence, ensures quality, and that we strive for continued improvements. So first, we're going to give the Student Success Award. This nominee is a person who has always strived to assist others, especially when it involves the success of the students. He has been there to assist all of the CTSOs, whether it was to help load and unload a van, judge an event, help with preparing supplies, serving as a male chaperone, taking community service items that students had collected to the Ronald McDonald House, and he never asked for anything in return. As his term as a Jobs for Kentucky Graduates Advisor, he had success with his students accomplishing and receiving national awards. As an aside, this nominee will retire in August, and since he would do anything to help students accomplish their goals, he deserves to be recognized for his service. I want to congratulate Mr. Dave Klusky in the Office of Career and Technical Student Transition. We can. Congratulations, Dave.
Congratulations, Dave, and I believe he has joined us. Dave, would you like to join us and share a few words with us? Is he on Teams? I'm not sure if
tried to call, he's not answering, so we'll keep trying to call him.
Okay, when he tunes in,
Hey, I'm here.
Oh, great.
There he is. Looks like he joined, maybe. Maybe
Well,
not.
I was going to try to join through Teams. Is that possible?
Oh, that's Charlie Harmon. So hang on, Charlie.
I'm sorry. Who are you calling?
Well, you too. Hang on 1 minute.
Okay.
We're looking for Dave Klusky.
Charlie, the
right.
reason we're calling you is we're missing some money.
I've got a whole barrel of it out here.
I want to, as we're seeing if Dave can join us, I want to tell a story about Dave. Dave just always been a great friend to me. He's the type of person that if you're having a bad day and you see him walking down the hall and then he talks to you, your spirits pick up. But he was the first person that greeted me when I got back to the department as the interim commissioner. And he was standing out in the parking lot. He didn't know I was going to be arriving then, but he told me, he said, "Boy, am I glad to see you." And he had his wife on the phone, and I got to talk to her, and that always meant so much to me. Even though I'd been at the department for quite a while, I was nervous coming back in this position, and it was funny that he was there to greet me and again to put me at ease. So, Dave, I want to thank you for that.
All right. Well, we can thank you, Dave, and we will come back to him if he joins us back. We can move on to our next one.
The next award is regarding the Strategic Partnerships Award. In early May, the commissioner and the department had a vision of finding a way to honor Kentucky's class of 2020 through a commencement ceremony that could be aired on television or virtually, featuring speakers and musical guests. The department approached KET with the idea of helping us edit and air the hour-long special, and they were not able to make that happen due to their own staffing reductions and budget reductions. Enter this OET rock star who, when asked if she would be willing to produce a show like this, did not hesitate and immediately asked what she could do to help. This nominee spent countless hours editing video clips and piecing together more than 1,200 photos to make the 45-minute tribute that aired on KDE's YouTube channel, which was a huge success. It would not have happened without her. We want to congratulate Megan Osborne in the Office of Education Technology, and we want to thank you for making this year's graduation tribute a huge success.
All right, Megan, I know you're on, so let's.
Megan.
Thank you.
Megan, I really want to thank you for everything that you did. You really, really did make this. I mean, everybody played such a big role, but clearly we would not have been able to do this job without the production and putting everything together. And it just turned out so well. And so thank you very, very much for what you did for our students and for our districts.
Thanks. I'm just happy to help.
That's a perfect response, Megan, because that's exactly why you're getting this award. I actually never approved this, that this tribute was going to happen. I actually told Tony, no, let's just forget it. When KET said they couldn't do it, Tony tried to shop it to other TV stations, et cetera. I said, just forget it. I said, we have enough on our plates already. So I never said yes. And then the next thing I know, it was pretty much done. And it's just an amazing example of the department. Obviously Megan's work, but just that can-do attitude that exists within the department. And the fact that we were able to do this, it just meant a whole lot, I think, to the whole state. To show that we were recognizing every school, and we tried to get as many pictures in there as possible. And Megan, you made it look easy. I know that has got to be a very tedious thing to do. It was just amazing that it happened. So, Megan, thank you so much. And then you and your partner there, you all do such a great job every day making sure these webcasts go off without a hitch. So thank you.
Absolutely. Can't do it without Andy.
Thanks, Andy, too.
The final award today is the Operational Excellence Award. This nominee will never tell you that he knows about educating children in the classroom. He will never claim to be an accountant, and he will really never share his political views. But I can tell you without a doubt that he has worked tirelessly to make sure that KDE provides the best guidance, support, and fiscal responsibility to our local school districts that he can possibly give. When he joined KDE, our crew watched him with a wary eye, not sure if he would fit in. We quickly learned that not only would he fit, but he would also become a mentor, friend, confident, defender, and advocate. He has told me that he had no idea that the amount of work had no idea about the amount of work that was involved with the position he was in, but he rolled up his sleeves and jumped right in. And of course, these are the words of the nominator. And I agree with all of them. I will never forget his first fiscal year closeout when he challenged Susan Ronca that he could get closer to the June balances than her. Little did he know she was the one who managed the balances, and he didn't have a prayer of being right. We still tease him about that one. He will hate this recognition, which makes it all the sweeter. So, Charlie, we don't have any missing money. We just don't have enough. We want to congratulate Charlie Harmon and thank you for all you have done for KDE. And for those of you that may not know, Charlie retired at the end of June, but we are recognizing him and a much-deserved award. Charlie, I can't say enough about your guidance and mentorship of me as well. During the COVID time, I was back in the office on, I think it was one Friday. It was during the close of the General Assembly. I think we were trying to find $10 million that we were going to be short. And I walked by and saw Charlie and Karen, and they were probably 12 feet apart to observe social distancing out in the common area. And he was sitting there, didn't sweat it, finding $10 million. And he could do that with his eyes closed. And amazing feat. A lot of things that go on with funding that we never see, but that makes the agency work, but most importantly, funds these school districts. So, Charlie, really want to thank you for your efforts all these years. We already miss you.
Kevin and everyone, I really appreciate the recognition. I had 10 years with the department. Every one of them was rewarding. And this recognition would not be anywhere possible if it wasn't for the 26 people who worked for me. I had 4 branches, and they all produced above where they should. With all that we're going through now, makes it even tougher, and all they do is step up to the plate. And so this is really part for them too.
So, Charlie, tell us a little bit about what you're doing in your retirement. I think you're now a gentleman farmer.
I'm actually out here today waiting for a tractor to be delivered.
Oh, love it.
So that's what I'm doing. I fixed a chainsaw this morning, and I've moved a camper. That's what I've accomplished today.
And I bet whoever you bought the tractor from probably didn't make much money. I'm sure you negotiated that.
I bet he got at least 3 quotes.
Yes, I did. You know me well.
I know you well, Charlie Harmon.
Congratulations
I appreciate all of you
again,
too.
Charlie, thank you. You're free to stay on with us, but if you would like. Congratulations again to Dave, Megan, Charlie. Great examples of what goes on every day at the department, and it's a pleasure to work with the three of you. So thank you. All of you have made me look good, and made your supervisors look good. So thank you so much for your work. Next, we want to recognize the new department staff. As you know, we normally do this, and we'll continue to do this at a state board meeting, but we're also going to keep doing this at the TeamKDE meeting. Not everyone can watch the state board meeting. It's important that TeamKDE knows about the new members of the team. So it's a little bit of a challenge in that we can't see everyone, but we do want to at least read their names. I will read their names, and it's also listed on your slide, so you can see when they joined the department and then what area where they work. The Office of the Commissioner, Jim Gaines in the Division of Communication. Office of Finance and Operations, Renee Tabor. Office of the School Community Nutrition, Child and Adult Care Programs, Rebecca Shepard Smith. Office of Finance and Operation, again, School Community Nutrition. Morgan Rousseau, again, School Community Nutrition within OFO. Tiffany Yeast, Resource Management in our HR department. Office of Education Technology, Manoj Chowdhury. Apologize if I didn't pronounce your name correctly. OET at School Technology Services. Brittany Cold Iron and also in School Technology Services. Office of Continuous Improvement and Support, Sarah Snipes in our Division of Innovation. Blake Connie, Student Success, Safe and Supportive Schools. Michelle Nichols, also in Student Success. Office of Legal Services, Melissa Moore, Executive Administrative Secretary. And the Office of Special Education and Early Learning, Tasha Oglesby. She's in the area of implementation of preschool and school readiness. I want to welcome all of you to the team. I think you have found a great place to be. It's very challenging, and you have great teammates, so welcome. And you have a great new coach on the way. And which leads us into our next update. As everyone, I'm sure you've been keeping up with the commissioner search. I'm not going to go over all of that. It is on your slide that just gives you an overview of the search process. It was an exhaustive process. It was a national search that resulted in numerous candidates. The board really spent a lot of time, as they should have, in coming to a decision upon our new commissioner of education. And you should already be aware, but at the conclusion of the July 6th through 7th interviews, the board identified a final candidate, and then on July 10th announced that Dr. Jason Glass will be Kentucky's next commissioner of education. Dr. Glass has been serving as a superintendent and chief learner for the Jeffco Public Schools in the Metro Denver, Colorado area since 2017. And prior to that, he served as a superintendent of Eagle County Schools in Colorado, as well as Iowa's Director of Education, serving as the Chief State School Officer from 2010 to 2013. So know that when he was in Iowa, he was the equivalent of Iowa's Commissioner of Education, that Iowa just has a different name for that position. Also would point out that his title in his current position is Chief Learner, and I really like that. And I think from early conversations, he's going to be interested in keeping that title here in Kentucky, and I think that sends a great message if he does so. He's going to officially begin his new role as the Commissioner and Chief State School Officer for Kentucky on September 14th. However, we were able to get some contract days for him in August. He's going to be able, he needs to oversee the beginning of school there in Jeffco, and we understand why his local board there would want him to do that. And so he won't be officially on board permanently until September 14th, but he does have a few contract days reserved that he can come here or at least virtually participate in some transition activities, and that's already begun. He's already moonlighting for us and reading and communicating with us. He's made a surprise appearance, as some of you participated in the commissioner's brown bag lunch or conversations with the commissioner, which is a lesson. If you don't participate in that brown bag, you may miss something. He had a surprise appearance and great conversation there, participated in our leadership team meeting on Monday, and I think we'll be able to, it's going to continue participating with us in leadership team as his schedule allows. So do we have a special guest with us, Tony?
We do.
I
We
feel
do.
like, you know, good. Mr. Rogers always had a special guest, and I was always excited when he said we have a special guest. So I feel like every time Jason appears as a special guest, I feel like I'm Mr. Rogers, and the special guest was always better than Mr. Rogers. So we're going to welcome our special guest, Dr. Glass.
Thank you, Kevin. I'm just not going to make any comments about you and Mr. Rogers, and that just got weird for everybody, but we're going to get through that. And I want to start out, Kevin, by just saying what a amazing and tremendous job you've done steering the ship in Kentucky over this, what has been an extraordinary period of challenge and change. It's just been great to watch you work and then get to work with you. So my hat is off, and the state of Kentucky owes you a huge debt of gratitude for the work that you've done.
Thank you.
And then,
as was mentioned and as evidenced by these awards, Dr. Glass, as you know, it's been a team effort, and it's been an amazing experience, even under these unprecedented circumstances. So I am happy to hand off a wonderful team to you, and I think you're really going to enjoy working with them.
Thank you. Well, I'm excited about that, and that's already started. As you know, Kevin, I think people are called into public education because they want to serve, and there's that sort of spirit of service that's important and deep to them. So even though this is a really challenging time, an extraordinarily challenging time, maybe the most challenging time that any of us have had to go through, we're all called to serve. And so it's an energizing time as well. I did, the district where I work now, Jeffco Public Schools, is the district that contains Columbine High School. And one of the connections and experiences that I've had here is getting to meet and talk with the staff who were at Columbine in 1999 when those murders occurred. And I can remember texting with Frank DeAngelis, who was the principal at Columbine when that happened, about where we are right now, and writing to him that this was the most difficult and extraordinary period any educator had to experience, had to go through. And then I remembered who I was talking with, and the things that Frank and that staff went through. So things are tough right now, but we're going to get through this, and we're going to help the state of Kentucky through this period. I think we have to keep reminding people that all the challenges that we're going through right now are temporary. That we're going to have to do some really hard things and choose from some bad options in order to get through this next period. But there will come a time when this virus doesn't rule our lives and doesn't direct everything that we do and how we interact with each other. This is temporary, and we're going to get through it. So I commend the work that the department has underway around supporting schools with COVID. I think that's been exemplary. I watched closely as Kentucky has done that, and also thought about how it compares with our experience in Colorado and other states. And I just want to say hats off. And you've done a great job supporting your schools. And that's the work that I think we have to keep going as we get into those difficult conversations around anti-racism and equity. We're going to have to support our school systems in having those conversations. I know some of them don't want to do that, aren't prepared to do that. But all of this, the racial issues and the racism issues that are present in our nation and in Kentucky right now, schools we have to self-reflect, examine, and ask what part of that have we played, and how can we be better? And how can we really make sure that every child in Kentucky, black, brown, white, Asian, whatever their skin tone is, that they really have an equitable opportunity at achieving the American dream and realizing their future. So we got some hard work to do on that. And then I also know that because of COVID-19 and some of the challenges that's created, we're likely to have some economic impact, some significant economic impact going forward. So we're going to have to support our schools with how we make those changes and improvements, or how we handle those budget shocks, how we help them really identify what's essential for their kids, and then help them change the sizes of their organizations in some cases to survive the economic impact. But the part, Kevin, that I'm most excited about is this conversation that I think is ripe in the state around what school could be and how we can change the experiences of our kids in Kentucky schools so that we prepare them for an exciting, globally interconnected, lightning fast, automated economy and world. The world is just going to get faster and faster from today. And so I think that we have to look at our schools and what we're doing now and ask tough questions about, do those experiences prepare kids for that future? And if not, how do we have to adapt, and what school could be to get our kids ready? So just some things I think we're working on. And I want to mention that just a hats off again to the staff at the Department of Education for your expertise, the support that you've given to schools in Kentucky. The Kentucky Department of Education has an exemplary reputation nationally for what you do. And so this is coming from a person who's worked in other states and has worked in national conversations. You have an exemplary reputation for the quality of work that you do. And that's something I'm excited about coming into and working with. I'll rely on you for the context in the state. I've lived away from Kentucky's home to me, but I've been gone for 17 years. So a lot has changed and a lot's different. And so I have a lot to learn. So I'm going to rely on you for that context and the stories and the history and how we got here and the implications of decisions. I want to make sure that I'm making good decisions on behalf of the kids in the state and the educators in the state and our communities, and I'll need you to help guide me through that. So sorry for the long-winded speech here, Kevin, but just had a few things I wanted to say to you and the rest of the staff, and I'm excited about coming home and getting to work.
I think we are excited as well. Tony, do we have any other questions or that we needed Dr. Glass to answer?
Well, yeah, I think so. One of the first that I think has come up a lot was the chief learner. Where did that you refer yourself to yourself as the chief learner of Jeffco? Can you talk a little bit about where that comes from and how that developed a little bit?
Sure. Well, I think when I started getting into different leadership roles, you often see in corporations what they call the C-suite positions. So the C-suite are all the chief positions. So you'll have a chief financial officer, chief strategy officer, chief operating officer, these sort of roles in corporations. And so I was thinking a lot at that time when I thought of this, is that the work in the schools is all about learning. So who's the chief learning officer? And I really have always thought that the superintendent or the commissioner, whoever the head of the system is, you have to demonstrate that commitment to learning and that vulnerability of learning, of understanding that you don't have all the answers. I certainly don't. That we need to listen, learn from people who have expertise and knowledge, try things, make mistakes, and be willing to learn from those and grow. I heard Bill Gates say that success is a terrible teacher. And I think that's right. The best lessons I've learned were from times when I've made mistakes and failures and had to get up and improve from that. So I'm sure that I will make some mistakes as I come into Kentucky. I'm going to try to minimize those and rely on your expertise and context to help me limit those. But I also expect to learn. And when I screw something up, to own it, and get better and keep improving. So it comes from that place of humility and also modeling the importance of learning throughout life.
All right. Well, the next question that we have is, and I'm sorry, but you're going to be asked this very, very frequently. UK or U of L?
Well, I tell people that when I worked in Iowa, I worked for Governor Terry Branstad, and he won 6 elections to be governor in the state, the longest serving public servant in the history of the United States. When I went to Iowa, he pulled me aside and he gave me a piece of advice, because they have a similar rivalry with Iowa and Iowa State. And so what he told me is, he said, listen, on this Hawkeyes Cyclones thing, never pick a side. So I have a harder time doing that because I'm a UK graduate and I do bleed blue. But I grew up in Brandenburg, which is a town just down the river from Louisville, and I grew up, a Cards fan. I loved Denny Crum's teams and Howard Schnellenberger's teams and Milt Wagner and all those great players from the 80s. That was who I grew up watching and idolizing. So I grew up a Cards fan. So I bleed red too. So I bleed red and blue. And as long as they're not playing each other, I hope they both win. And if you ask me who I root for when they play each other, I will never say.
Great answer. Great answer. Kevin?
All right, Dr. Glass, well, thank you for joining us today. We have some great work ahead of us on this call, actually, and we're going to get started on some implicit bias work. We're going to have an introduction. We know your schedule is tight, but if you can stay around, we would welcome for you to do that. But thank you for dropping in. You never know when Dr. Glass will be dropping in to a meeting between now and the 14th. So thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks, Tony. I look forward to getting to Kentucky and working with everybody. Everybody take care and stay safe. Don't let yourselves be a vector for this virus. So wear a mask.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I think we will, if it's okay with Keith and Rita, let's move the return to work tips to the end of the meeting. And I know we have Dr. Cleveland already on, and we're running just a few minutes behind. I want to be respectful of his time. Before I introduce Dr. Cleveland to introduce us to the implicit bias and that concept and that unfortunate reality, Tony, I'm going to defer to you. I'm asking Tony to actually read the KBE resolution that the Kentucky Board of Education passed at its last meeting, affirming its commitment to racial equity in Kentucky public schools. Sometimes when boards pass resolutions, they may honor something or they may call attention to something, and then we may never talk about it again. That's not going to be the case with this one. And I know that because you just heard from Dr. Glass, and this is an issue. Racial equity is an issue, one of 3 major issues he is going to be keeping at the forefront as he comes to Kentucky. And I also know that from the comments of the Board of Education members. This is something that needs to be a working document, this statement that Tony is about to read. It needs to be included in your packets that you prepare for meetings. It needs to be dog-eared. It needs to have notes on it, and you need to highlight it. If you're not aware of where to get the statement, Tony will be telling you where you can find that on our KDE website. I encourage you, when you have access to a printer, to print that out and put that in your workspace. Tony, will you please read the statement?
Yes. So you should be seeing it on my screen. I had to advance our slides a little bit. Can you just confirm that it's on the screen for me?
It is.
Okay, great. So this Kentucky Board of Education resolution was adopted at the July 10th, 2020 meeting, affirming its commitment to racial equity in Kentucky public schools. Whereas the vision of the Kentucky Board of Education is to ensure that each student is empowered and equipped with the knowledge and skills to be successful in a complex and competitive world. Whereas the Kentucky Board of Education resolutely stands against all acts of racism and violence. Whereas this unique and historic moment in our country's evolution presents an opportunity and challenge for all of us to be part of creating a better educational community for students and, importantly, for African American students and students of color. Whereas our Commonwealth's public schools have a history of racial inequity. Even today, students and staff of color, particularly African American students and staff, are often left out of the conversation and remain unheard. Whereas academic achievement gaps prove to be pernicious challenges that have not been successfully eliminated. Even with the progress we have made in recent decades with increases in achievement overall, there has been no significant reduction in closing such gaps between racial groups. In fact, some school district gaps have widened. Whereas the Kentucky Board of Education is committed to delivering on its core promises to every member of our public school system. Every child deserves a high-quality education. Every staff member deserves to be respected in the workplace. Every voice deserves to be heard. Whereas we believe that educational leaders must embrace diversity, assure equality, and shape the future of all of Kentucky's children. The Kentucky Board of Education is dedicated to tackling racism through support of inclusionary teacher preparation programs that put highly qualified teachers of color in front of students and school improvement options for local districts to close achievement gaps. Whereas every student in the Commonwealth deserves equitable access to excellent educators who have unique experiences and perspectives, quality preparation, and are committed to success of all learners. Kentucky's education leaders have a shared responsibility to deliver a high-quality education to all students. Together with deliberate action and shared commitment, we can deliver on that promise. Whereas the initiatives that promote the development of a teaching population that reflects the makeup of the student population have fallen woefully short. According to the Kentucky School Report Card, Kentucky's African American teacher workforce during the 2018-19 school year was a mere 3.33%. That percentage is conspicuously low when compared to Kentucky's African American student population at 10.6%. Whereas pursuant to KRS 158649 and 703 KAR 5:225, every school in Kentucky must annually develop, review, and revise a comprehensive school improvement plan that includes biennial targets, strategies, activities, and a time schedule calculated to eliminate the achievement gap among various groups of students to the extent that such a gap exists. Accordingly, the Kentucky Department of Education must provide districts and schools with knowledge, resources, and technical assistance for their use, and to monitor them in planning and implementation of their strategies and activities to help close the achievement gap. Whereas we acknowledge that the Commonwealth must make a concerted effort to address the social and emotional health of our students and staff, as we confront the convergence of serious racial unrest and a global pandemic, we know that many members of our education family, children, youth, and adults, will return to school this fall experiencing some level of trauma. Mental health must be at the forefront of all of our decision making. Whereas we stand firm in these beliefs and are resolved to bring about meaningful change in all Kentucky public schools. Without such change, socioeconomic and racial opportunity gaps that have existed for decades will undoubtedly continue. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Kentucky Board of Education will amplify our voice in support of minority students, their families, and minority educators. We will not only listen to their concerns and aspirations, but we pledge to leverage those concerns and aspirations to inform our actions. Be it resolved that we call on educators, schools, and districts to commit to listening to those seeking to be heard and to ensure that young people of color feel valued and safe in school and in the community. We challenge our schools, districts, local boards of education, educational cooperatives, parents and families, and communities to join together to break down the barriers that stand between students of color and the equitable education they deserve. We envision a future where all educational leaders actively engage minority voices within their communities to influence decisions. Be it resolved that we urge all schools to examine the Kentucky Framework of Best Practices for School Counselors, released by the Kentucky Department of Education on June 2nd, 2020. This framework is the first of its kind in the Commonwealth and helps to reimagine and realign the roles and responsibilities of school counselors so they can better meet the immediate needs of our. We call on all education personnel to focus on the mental health needs of our students, provide more individual and small group counseling services, and increased care for the whole child. Because we know that a child who is hurting cannot learn. Be it resolved, the Kentucky Board of Education asks the Kentucky General Assembly to recommit to the provisions of KRS 161.165, which outlines the importance of diversifying the teacher workforce by restoring funding for programs like the Kentucky Academy for Equity in Teaching, otherwise known as KAET. The KAET is dedicated to recruiting and retaining minority teachers. Be it resolved, the Kentucky Board of Education encourages education leaders across the Commonwealth to examine policies, procedures, and funding decisions to ensure children of every race have equal access to educational opportunities. We urge district leaders to think unconventionally and innovatively to serve all students, because conventional methods clearly have not yielded the results that we need to dismantle racism in our schools and ensure that educational equity becomes a reality for every Kentucky learner in every Kentucky classroom. Be it resolved, the Kentucky Board of Education calls on our Commissioner of Education to continue and reinvigorate the work of the Kentucky Department of Education to foster a culture of anti-racism and further racial equality within our public schools, adopted by the Kentucky Board of Education on July 10th, 2020. And it was signed by Lou Young, who is the chair of the Kentucky Board of Education.
Thank you, Tony, for reading the resolution. It's important that we took time to do that. The resolution is long and for good reason. And every word in that resolution is important. I want to thank the board for passing it. And I also want to thank the individuals at the department that helped craft the resolution. But most importantly, the work ahead, the most important work is ahead, and that is actually heeding the call of the resolution. And we're going to start by doing some self-reflection and some learning on how we can, as individuals, begin that process, and that is learning more about implicit bias. We are very lucky today to have Dr. Roger Cleveland with us to lead us on that journey and begin that journey. Not many SEA, very few SEAs can have somebody the caliber of Dr. Cleveland to be able to address their team. And so he really needs no introduction, but he certainly deserves an introduction, and I'm going to give it to him. Many of you know Dr. Cleveland. He taught at Morehead State University, University of Kentucky, Middle Tennessee State University, and also Eastern Kentucky University. He's currently a full professor in the School of Education at Kentucky State University and serves as the director of the Center for Research on the Eradication of Educational Disparities. It's referred to as CREED. And then I also want to mention this. In 2014, he was inducted into the Kentucky Civil Rights Hall of Fame. And 2 years earlier, he was honored by the Kentucky Association of Blacks in Higher Education as a Professor of the Year and was recognized as Teachers Making a Difference at Eastern Kentucky University. The awards and accolades go on, but I wanted you to understand the caliber of person that we have to begin this discussion with us. And we also believe, and I believe Dr. Glass will continue this, not just an introduction to implicit bias, but this is going to be a process for us. And there will be a lot of more work to do than just a 30-minute introduction, but we believe this is an appropriate way to start. So, Dr. Cleveland, I will turn it over to you, and thank you again for being with us.
Dr. Cleveland, you're on mute.
Can you all hear me okay now?
Yes.
We can, and I'm going to share the slides. I'm not certain, just so you know, I think you had sent in some, I wasn't able to get the most recent editions on there, but I do have the ones that you had sent this morning. So I'm going to go ahead and share those.
Okay. And you're going to control that for me?
I sure can, sir.
Okay, that's fine. All right, you can go to the next first slide. So and give me the objectives real quickly. Thank you. As Kevin mentioned, I want this to be more of a conversation. You can show all three of them, Tony, that's fine. And I want this to be more of a conversation. Training always implies that the person who produced the PowerPoint has the knowledge, and the folks who didn't, don't. Actually, everybody, I see a lot of names I recognize from being at KDE back in the day. So I'm not making the assumption that I'm the only one on this call that has the knowledge base. And so we all have something to share, and we have knowledge to share. I will want to just jump into it because we don't have a lot of time. So you can go to the next slide, please. So the question is the why. So why did Kevin and our new commissioner and the State Board of Education, why are we talking about implicit bias? Why are we talking about a resolution around equity? So why are we having this? And so many of you all are familiar with the, it disappeared, there it is. Many of y'all have talked about why are we doing certain things, and you've heard Simon Sinek talk about the why, and I think that's important why we had this conversation. And you can see the next slide with the data. So a grad student did this a while back, and if there's any data folks on the call, I think it's fairly accurate. This is about 2 years ago, K-Prep scores and a percentage of students, fourth grade readers, proficient and distinguished. And I want you to look at quick, and I showed this last time I was at an all KDE meeting, and I wanted a quick response about not only the observations, we know that the gaps are there. And the gaps, when I got to KDE, we're moving from Keras to CATS, and now we're at K-Prep. And the two things we know for sure is that all students in Kentucky have improved overall, but also the gaps just moved every time, even though we changed accountability systems, the gaps just moved of themselves. And so, but my question for you all, so I don't know, maybe inside the State Department, this is a crisis, and maybe for myself, this is a crisis. Looking at, the percentage scores of English language learners, African-American students, migrant, students with disabilities, foster care, homeless, Hispanic, that may be a crisis. But throughout the Commonwealth, I'm not quite sure. So my first question for you all, this is about the why we're having this conversation, is what do you think the conversation would be if this was inverted? In other words, if this data point was inverted and English language learner and African-American students were at 90% or 67%, and white students were at 25% proficient and distinguished, what would the conversation be? That's not a rhetorical question. I'm looking for a response. What would the conversation be throughout the state of Kentucky? Anyone?
Hey, Dr. Cleveland, it's Kelly Foster.
Hey, Kelly.
I'll chime in here. How you doing?
I'm doing well.
I don't know that I know exactly what the conversation would be, but I can promise you there would be some urgency around it.
I would have to agree with you. Any other thoughts? There will be a sense of urgency. What else?
Dr. Cleveland, this is Tony Constatman. I'm running your slides. I would, and I've put this out to our soapbox, and I hope that TeamKDE, please, you don't just have to ask a question through the soapbox, but please provide your comments in the soapbox, and we can go ahead and read them there as well.
Okay.
My response would be, I want to know what I can do to make a difference and how to change that.
How do you think the overall narrative would be throughout the Commonwealth, Tony?
Rage, upset.
So listening to, does anyone else want to chime in before I respond to Kelly and Tony? Anyone else? I'll take the silence as a no. So Kelly said there'd be a sense of urgency. Tony said there'd be rage, and I'll agree with both of them. So the fact that there's not a sense of urgency throughout the Commonwealth, there's not rage, that means there is an issue there around race in particular, that this may not be that important. So that's the why we had to have this conversation, and why our entering new commissioners coming in and Kevin and the board have had this conversation. That's the why, because these data have been like this for a while. So next slide, please. That's our why.
Dr. Cleveland, there were a couple more that came in through the soapbox, and they were my observation. Why is it like this? It would absolutely be a crisis situation with the majority of our students that far below. How do we change this? It would not be acceptable. People would be shocked. Okay.
All right. So a lot of my reasons, just real quickly for the folks in the soapbox, they all are eyes that some of the reasons, there's multiple reasons why we have achievement gaps and things of that nature. But some of the ones that are critical to this conversation is that we do have a lot of ignorance. And ignorance is not a bad thing unless you decide to remain that way. We had a lot of indifference. We have a lot of implicit bias involved in this also. And we have explicit bias also. So it's just not implicit bias or why these data look this way, but that is one reason. That's one area we're going to address today, but it's just not implicit bias. There are explicit biases also. All right, we can go ahead, Tony. Change happens in an organization when the discomfort of remaining the same is greater than the discomfort of change. And I'm working with the Association of Career and Technical Education, their office in DC, and I'm working with them, and also the National Association of Ag Educators, but mostly their leadership and their organization before we get down to the teachers. And, can I get a couple of responses to this? In the context of what we're talking about, in the context that we've had KIRIS, CATS, and KPREP, okay, and the fact that our students have improved overall, but the gap remains. In the context of that, why do you think I shared this quote right here?
Okay, soapbox is open.
Dr. Cleveland, this is Todd Allen. It seems to me that, this quote goes to the status that we're dealing with when, as a state, we will be so uncomfortable and so dissatisfied with the results that we see that we demand a change.
All right. Thank you, Todd. Anyone else? As Todd said, until you get to that point that we really want to do something different, okay? Until we get to that point and really want to do something different, things are going to remain the same. Anyone else? We can move on. All right, Tony.
All right.
Now, you all know this is weird for me because those who know when I present or whatever, I'm all over the place. And, so sitting in my chair in my office and talking to you all through this. So let's talk about implicit bias. Let's go to the next slide, Tony. So simply, you can move ahead. Simply, implicit bias refers to the attitudes or stereotypes that affect our understanding, actions, and decisions in an unconscious manner. So let's stop there for a second. So basically, our biases, the implicit biases, we're not conscious of this behavior. Even if they are negative, positive, whatever it is, it's called unconscious for a reason because we're not aware of this. Biases can be favorable and unfavorable and are activated involuntarily without our awareness or intention or control. So one thing to take away for sure with our biases is that we all have them. Implicit biases, we all have them about different things. Also, with our biases, where do they come from? Well, they come from our perspectives from the past. And those perspectives from the past are our reference groups, whether it's home, our community, or the big one, the media. Okay, the media. So that's where our perspectives from our biases come from, our perspectives from the past. And because of those perspectives from the past and those messages that we received growing up, especially our influential years, those messages create perceptions, or what we may call schemas or mental models. And so I'll give you a couple of examples of how we have our mental models. Mental models are our perceptions which come from our past experiences. And those past experiences come from our reference groups: home, home, community, the media. And so 2 examples of mental models. About a year or so ago, I was working with Las Vegas schools, Clark County schools in Las Vegas. They're about the 4th or 5th largest school district in the country. And I was working with their principals on some stuff like this. And imagine I'm going out to Vegas 4 or 5 times a year. And the last time I go out to Vegas, when I walk in, instead of like 100 principals in the room, there's 400 people clogging. And so apparently I'm in the wrong room. Okay, I'm looking for principals. There are people in there clogging and dancing. Well, I don't know much about clogging, but when I walk into the room, my mind works like a computer, and it does a Google search of what I know about clogging. Okay, and it does a search, and it's gonna probably pop about 2 or 3 things I know about clogging, maybe hard shoes, dresses, or whatever. But whatever pops up in my head, that schema, that mental model, that's how I'm going to interact with that situation. So if you have past experiences and it's create perceptions about African-American males and how you perceive them, and your first interaction with that person, your mind's gonna work like a computer. It's gonna do a search of what I know about African-American males. That could be negative, it could be positive, or whatever it is. That's your mental model. And whatever pops in your head is how you're going to interact with that person, whether it's accurate or inaccurate. And that's our bias. Okay, those are implicit biases. It's not something that you plan to do, you prep for. It just happens. That's how our brains work. Okay, and a lot of times, as many of you all know, we have our prefrontal cortex and the amygdala, in the back part of our brain, and the fast brain. Okay, is where the amygdala comes up. We come up with quick information, things like that. The prefrontal cortex will actually process information. So a lot of times we go to our fast brain when we interact in a situation we're not familiar with. So we may say things or do things that is not appropriate or maybe a bias, but those are the things we have stored in our mind, and it comes up instant. Our brains are searching for information. You can go to the next slide, Tony. I know I'm going kind of fast, but I'm trying to get all this in. So just kind of give you a picture of how this what brings bias. We bring bias to work. So we have our reference groups. We have our schemas, our mental models, okay, which creates our bias. And now our employees come into the organization, and then those create dynamics that we're not talking about today, but our biases create what we call microaggressions, micro messaging, micro inequities. Let's take micro messaging for example. In a classroom, micro messaging may be this: you have 31 kids in the classroom. It's late October, and we talk about proxemics and teachers and proxemics in the classroom, but I never come and stand beside Kelly Foster in my 4th grade class. Never come stand beside her. So I didn't say I didn't like Kelly Foster, but the message I may be giving her is that I don't like her without even saying it. Or I may not call on Kelly Foster or 3 other kids who look like Kelly Foster. I never said I didn't like her. I didn't say I think I had high expectations for them, but my micro messaging may send that off. And the kids will say, teacher doesn't like me. Those are micro messaging, okay? Something as simple as walking through the hallway at KDE and people you work with every day, which you never speak. That's a micro message, okay? You don't think it's a big thing, but it actually impacts the climate of the organization. And then it becomes a regular thing, and that climate becomes the culture of the organization. And then our biases can impact our policies, our practices, and procedures. So all becomes our bias. If we know we have biases, do we ever think about when we're developing policies at the State Department and thinking about our practices that we're going to share with our districts and schools, do our biases seep into those policies and practices? Okay. So to recap, our implicit biases, they're unconscious. We're not aware of them. We all know them. They come from our perspectives from the past, our reference groups, home, community, the media. And those biases, those perspectives from the past creates our perceptions, which is our mental models of what we have of people, and that creates our biases. And we bring our biases to work every single day. Okay. So you can, next slide. All right. 7-Eleven. So the first thing when you saw that, what came to your mind? Probably Slurpees, Big Gulp, coffee, good or bad, late night convenience store. Now, I haven't been in a 7-Eleven and I don't know when, but if I see that sign, something's going to pop in my head, even though it's been 15 years since I've been in a 7-Eleven. That's called a mental model, okay? And so it pops in your head. And this study I thought was interesting at NYU. According to a study at NYU, people make 11 decisions or assumptions about an individual within the first 7 seconds of contact. So think about all the information you may have heard about people from the North, okay? We live in Kentucky. So say you've never been to New York City, but you heard all this information about New York City. So the first time you meet someone from New York City, okay, you have a number of things going through your head, and you may come up with 11 decisions about that person or 11 assumptions about that person in the first 7 seconds of contact, based on where they're from, what they look like, what they have on, okay? That's how powerful our mental models are. You can go to the next slide, Tony. All right, so what are some ways, you can click all the way through. What are some ways we can de-bias? One is education. Be mindful that we have these biases. Critical conversations like the start of this conversation we're having and training will be part of that also. That's the education part. Exposure. Putting yourself in a situation sometimes where you are the minority, coming in contact with people in diverse situations, and not, doing a drive-by, but immerse yourself in diverse situations and coming in contact with people who are different from you, with different perspectives also. And then finding positive exemplars for people, not only when you think of a certain group of people, you think of the negative part of something that's tied back to them. And then your approach, processing, reflecting about your biases once they are pointed out to you. Assessing policies for bias, which is crucial. I think at your all's level, assessing for policy is really critical. And then also creating a culture of anti-bias and anti-racist education. And those are two different issues. You have implicit bias, which we're not aware of our behaviors and biases until those are pointed out to us. But you also we need to have anti-racist education also for districts and schools also, because that's where the explicit biases come in. People know exactly what they're doing with explicit biases and stereotypes and things of that nature. So I had a video clip. We got like 11 minutes. I'm not quite sure we can get through that. We can try. I think it's like 8 minutes.
You've got all the time you need. We can go over.
All right. Is that Kevin?
That's me.
Kevin, you the man. Now I can slow down a little bit, okay? You know, I always want to be respectful of people's time.
All right, just give me a few minutes to pull that one up. So just give me 1 second.
Oh, no problem. And while she's doing that, the video is called "The Danger of a Single Story." And let's have a discussion after you watch it. It's about a lady from Nigeria, and he talks about her experience coming to the United States. So as soon as Tony pulls it up, we'll watch. I think it's like maybe 8 or 9 minutes or so, and then we're gonna have a quick conversation about that, and then I'll wrap it up.
Sorry, trying to share the, I'm trying to get it off of the YouTube channel so we don't have any issues with our sharing on the live video. So it's just taking an additional minute. If you have a few more comments while I pull that up.
While she's trying to pull it up, does anyone have any? I know I went through that kind of fast. Do you have any comments or questions right now with that? Because I do have a couple of recommendations and next steps after we go out your video. But any comments, observations, questions based on the oh, by the way, I will make this announcement that through our partnership Creed Center with KDE, I'm actually doing a 90-minute PD on implicit bias tomorrow. And Debbie Sauber may have the registration information. So if y'all want to pop in tomorrow, I think it's 11 to 12:30, or I can send it to Robin real quickly after this, or you can tell other folks. I know most of the time we usually get mostly teachers, but it's open for anybody, any Kentucky educators. So if you want to pop in for that, that's tomorrow. Any questions, comments? You all for quiet.
I do have one on the soapbox while I work on getting this pulled up from YouTube. It does say, it's just kind of a comment on an observation. Clearly, some kind of change needs to occur, especially when the gap still exists, instead of trying to maintain a status quo. And then secondary to that, below that, there was another comment that said, it's hard to imagine many, sadly, most Kentuckians being uncomfortable with the current status.
Yeah. And that just tells us we have a bigger issue. You know, I always say that schools are just a microcosm of what's really going on in society. And so I always tell when I'm doing work with schools and districts that many times the achievement gap starts before kids walk into your classroom. But what you want to make sure is that you're not complicit in widening that gap or perpetuating that gap and finding ways to close it. And we need to, you know, as educators, we need to quit trying to fix disenfranchised children and fix the things that actually disenfranchise those students. But sometimes we're in a business in some of our schools, and we're trying to fix children versus fixing the things that are creating barriers for students.
Dr. Cleveland, this is Todd Allen. I do have a quick question for you about maybe Creed Center resources. I think that ongoing conversations are critical. We have to have conversations and people have to be willing to listen. And I'm just wondering if the Creed Center has maybe any regular newsletters or resources that we as KDE staff could subscribe to that would assist us in our ongoing conversations and listening on this topic.
Okay. And first question, I'll say yes. And some of that has been shared with, I don't know the name of the division, but it's Christina Weeder's division. So a lot of information through handouts and PowerPoints I've shared with them. But answer your question, yes. And I guess if Robin's going to be my contact person, I can share some things with her that she can get out to everyone. The other thing that I would recommend to you all in helping districts, I've been working with Jefferson County, and Fayette County's going to do a training for their principals, and I did a training called Reopening Our Minds as we Reopen Schools, and it seems like a lot of our most ethnically diverse school districts are going to be going virtual initially. But at some point in time, our kids are going to come back to school, and the conversations around race and Black Lives Matter and things like that are going to come up. And we need to prepare our teachers to have those conversations and navigate through those conversations. And I'm not sure that they are ready to do that. And it's not necessarily their fault, because we're prepping for COVID-19, but we're not prepping for the racial pandemic is going to hit some of our schools, and that's going to happen. It looks like Tony has the video ready, and so.
I do. I think we should be good to go.
Okay, go ahead. Thank you.
In Eastern Nigeria. My mother says that I started reading at the age of 2, although I think 4 is probably close to the truth. So I was an early reader, and what I read were
not working too well.
Can you hear it?
It's off a little bit. We can try it next time. Don't worry about it.
Okay, no worries.
No problem. So I want to get to these last few things. I want to have a quick conversation with you all about some next steps. So we can go to back to the PowerPoint. No worries. Okay, I'm gonna share this with you all, and I really think that as I think about what's going on through our country and our Commonwealth, and also the resolution from the State Board of Education, that I would recommend next steps, and this is not for districts and schools, this is for Department of Education, is that we look at our policies, our current policies and our practice and programs, and how we're providing technical assistance and support for schools and districts through microaggression, micro messaging, implicit and definitely explicit bias. One of the things I didn't have one I want to add to it is racial equity, because we've been talking about equity. Matter of fact, in probably, I guess, 2002 up till 2006, we had a division of equity in the State Department of Education. We had an initiative on African American students in the State Department of Education in the mid 2000s. I think Robin was there, and David Cook and a few other folks on here were in there. But we talk about equity, but we don't talk about racial equity. And right now, I think Jefferson County Public Schools is the only district that I'm aware of that has a racial equity policy. I think there's about 5 districts that have a equity policy that I'm aware of. I know I work with Fleming County has one. I think Warren County has one. Fayette and Jefferson, maybe a couple of the districts that have that. So I think next steps, as we continue to talk about implicit bias, we talk about explicit bias, we talk about microaggression in our schools, we talk about micro messaging in our schools, we put racial equity on the on the map and talk about that, keep that on the radar. And the last one to consider is developing a racial equity scorecard. And so every school and every district is accountable. Now, that's going to take some work and some training, things like that to get that done. But I think for the purpose of this work, I think the next step is going a little deeper on it, implicit bias, explicit bias, and microaggression. With that said, I'll open up for questions, comments, thoughts.
Dr. Cleveland, and maybe this is something that since Kelly is on this particular team, or maybe, I'm not sure, we do have a guidance document about having these courageous conversations that we recently put out. I'm not sure if anybody's on the team from leadership that we could, maybe that relates a little bit to this about, that perhaps we can share. This is one of the guidance documents that we've provided to our districts fairly recently. So that's an idea.
Yeah, I'd like to see that if you all, somebody could share it with me.
Sure. And let me switch back over to the soapbox here. There's a comment just talking about how in addition to race, it's about poverty, access, and so much more. Comment there. And then another comment about outside of a conversation and a resolution, what needs to be put in place at KDE is to ensure the work moves forward into policy and practice across the agency.
Mm-hmm. I think on one point about the race piece, and it's been constant, even when you default for even for poverty, that African American students, Ed Trust has done a lot of research, and all the states, but Kentucky does fairly well with high poverty students in general, but we don't do really well with African American students. And so even when you account for poverty, we'll have white students who are in free and reduced lunch that outperform African American students who are not in free and reduced lunch. So even when you test for poverty, race still comes out. And that's why the racial equity piece, and I think because we've always defaulted to poverty, that we lose our focus on race and African American students. And I know for sure, spending years and working with schools in Eastern Kentucky, that poverty is an issue, but we don't want to lose the fact that even when African American students who are not poor are still being outperformed by students of other groups who are on free and reduced lunch. And so something has to be there. Unless these students are innately just less intelligent, then there's got to be an issue around race and poverty. So imagine if you're an African American male, poor, and in special education. What's your chances of doing really well in our schools? That's a good question. So I understand the comment in the soapbox, but if you start, and I'm not the data expert at all, but if you start looking at our data and you examine race and poverty, race is still going to be an issue. Okay, race is still, and matter of fact, I think in Kentucky, I think African Americans are 2 to 3 times likely to be poorer than other students in the state of Kentucky. So poverty is an issue, don't get me wrong, so students with disabilities, but we can't discount race. And I'm not saying that person's discounting that, but we have to put that out there,
Also, Dr. Cleveland, I just wanted to make sure, please let Dr. Cleveland know that most of our TeamKDE is tuned in one way through the YouTube channel, and they're not being passive, in parentheses, silent on these important issues. Okay. So I am trying to, they just want you to know that. So I wanted to make sure I voiced that through the soapbox. And there are several more comments coming in, so I will get through some of this. They asked if we could send the link to the TED Talk to our TeamKDE staff. Absolutely, you all will be getting a copy of the complete PowerPoint. It'll be on SharePoint, as always. we will also be sharing with our Team KDE at the Kentucky School for the Blind and the Deaf, and it made it accessible. The next question, Dr. Cleveland, many areas of explicit and implicit bias are related to mental modeling that you mentioned occur because of, and in parentheses, number 1, negative images, 2, social media, and 3, biased curriculum. What's with strategies of equity and racial harmony? I'm not sure what the question is there, but I think that was the kind of the comment about that, or that was the thought process to what you were talking about with the mental modeling.
Okay, I'm not sure how to respond to that.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought it was a question, but it looks like there was just more of a comment, or maybe there was. So it's not just going outside of a conversation. This is a conversation that needs to continue. It needs to continue within KDE, and changes need to be done here as much as in schools. We need more diversity in our teams as well as in schools.
And I'm all for, I don't know if Kevin, you're still there? I don't know if he may have left, but I was on.
I'm here. I'm here.
Yeah, I was on Renee Shaw's KET show last Monday, and I got these text messages and things like that after I said this. So the question was about diversifying our teaching corps in Kentucky, which I'm all for, But also I said that the fact of the matter is that, in Kentucky, our pool, I think we're about 12 or 13% African American in the state of Kentucky. I don't know if it's that high. And so when we break it down to the number of students who actually go to college and then decide to major in education and then get to the teacher education program, our pool is really small. And as much as I hate to say the cliche is that build the planes, you fly it. Yeah, we need to constantly recruit and not only recruit, but retain teachers of color. But the fact of the matter is, just because of our population and the support we have at the state level through legislation, really only supports mostly, and just recently changed, students from Kentucky. And so I think now it's changed a little bit through our new program. But my other part is that probably 85 to 87% of our teachers are white. And there's a good chance that's going to remain to some degree. We better drop it down some and keep recruiting, things like that. So one is continue to recruit. But I was just stating that on KET that we have to train and prepare our colleges, universities have to prepare and train our teachers, regardless what they look like, to be able to teach all the students who come into their classroom. I mean, my point was we're not going to recruit our way out of this issue. We have to recruit, and I'm all for it. Of anybody, I'm all for it. But at the same time, we also need to prepare all our teachers. And so we can't use the fact that we don't have enough African-American teachers or Latinx teachers to solve this issue. The fact of the matter is we have enough teachers can teach anyone if they're prepared well and want to do well. And that was my point on KET, not to recruit and focus on that, but you're going to do both. Does that make sense, Kevin?
Yes, I think it does.
It does.
Yeah,
and I think we have to start earlier with exposing students to the possibilities of careers. I know when I was in Jefferson, we were able to pair some attorneys up with not high school. I mean, that's still important to have that exposure in high school, but in middle school, they need to understand that it's possible for the students to go on to medical school, law school, do all of these things at an earlier age.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's part of it as well.
And the other piece is, my pastor always says this: model what you mandate, right? So we probably need to diversify the Department of Education also. True? It
is. It's very true. And, when you look on paper at our diversity level, it is better than, as far as the percentage exceeds almost every year. I think can remember exceeds the state goal for minority employees. And I think we exceed that pretty much several percentage points. But when you start going down under the data and you look at the leadership team or you look at the commissioner's office, we have areas where we have no diversity at all, and or very limited diversity. And so sometimes the numbers can be deceiving.
Yeah, very true. Anything else for the good of the order?
Yeah.
I appreciate you. Yes, go ahead.
Dr. Cleveland, how do we go, this is from the soapbox, how do we go about calling more attention to data that already exists and is available to move the needle?
You know, I think that's, you know, my colleagues on here that was at the State Department when I was there, that was always been an issue. I've thought that we have the data and it's teased out. I just think that one of the things we used to do, which I thought was really effective, is that we had, instead of having workshops, we had work sessions, and districts and schools would bring their comprehensive school improvement plan to KDE, or we'll go out there and work with them with their data around equity. And so it was more work sessions, and we used the data instead of sending it out to them and hoping that they use it. You know, hope's not a strategy, right? So we went out with them. Here's your data. We're trying to make sure you create, because one of the things we used to do was they had to have an equity component in their school improvement plan. In the early I don't know why we stopped doing that, but we used to have an equity component. So we used to work with them and using that data side by side and teasing out, as Kevin said, going deeper under the surface. And then, see, I always say this, you have the data and then there's a story behind the data. There's a story behind the stats. And so instead of just looking at the data, we look at the question, why is the data like this? And start asking simple questions like the Pittsburgh walkthrough, like in reference to racial equity, what are you doing? Why are you doing it? Is it good work? And how do you know it's good work? Ask those 4 questions, whether it's about equity, whether it's about curriculum or whatever. In this case, equity and racial equity and implicit bias. And then answer those questions as we're going through the data and deeper. But I think sometimes you're going to be side by side people and do work sessions versus workshops and make sure that the good data that KDE is sending out, they're actually using it. You know, I hope that makes sense.
Sure. And there was another question here too. You know, the National Board for Professional Teaching Standards are adopting the phrase minoritized in quotations instead of minority to reflect the systemic negative effects on linguistically and culturally diverse students and teachers of color. Do you think that this change of language can change perspectives?
It can. What it does, it, you know, when you think of minority, what do you think of? You think of less than, right? And some people think less than, but the reality is when you look globally, and even in our larger cities and different parts around the world, people of color are not the minority. But when you label that, that's like subgroups, minority, it always seems less than. So yeah, I've seen the language minoritize, and what they're trying to do is not put that mental model in your head that these people are less than, even though most people are not necessarily thinking that way. But you know, you have to be careful to make sure that's not the case. So that's where minoritized is coming from, that or subgroups, or this group is less than. And the reality is that, you know, globally, that people of color are not the minority. And even, you know, in our largest cities, they're not the minority, but they're still called the minority. And I think that what that does is create a conversation. Everyone may not get it immediately, and that's fine. That's the thing about, you know, that's why I hate about strategies, because, you know, everybody wants strategies, but they don't want to reflect about why they need the strategies. They want to just jump in. If you really don't believe the reason behind you need the strategies, you're not going to implement it with fidelity anyway. And so with this case around minoritized, Tony, what we'll do, at least start a conversation about it. And everybody's at different places. So I don't think everybody will change their mind and just change their vocabulary instantly until they have a true understanding of it. And, you know, you respect that. You respect where people are.
I appreciate that response. I think that was a good question too. And I think it shows that maybe perhaps some of our national organizations are trying to go about different ways of trying to address the issue. There's another comment here in our soapbox perspective. I think leadership will need to get fairly specific on timing and priority of reviewing and revising policies and programs in order to make significant progress.
Okay, that's a Kevin question.
And then also, Dr. Cleveland, where can I find your contact information and the registration link for tomorrow's PD? Can you just make sure you email that to us or to me, and I'll make sure to put that in the email when we send this out to Team KDE?
I do it as soon as I get off here, and I'll send it to you all.
Perfect. Thank you. And I believe this is just the first of many. I mean, Dr. Cleveland will be joining us, and I just want to say too, we're trying to work out this virtual, professional development platform. So I do apologize for not being able to have. We're not really sure how many we can have and interact on this format. I hope next time, of course, the hope is that we can all be in the same room together. But hopefully next time we'll work on within leadership to figure out a way to perhaps maybe have everyone on Teams that's at least joined in, and so we can try to be a little bit more interactive on this. But I thought it was a great conversation, Kevin.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree, and I want to encourage everyone to. We'll send the link to the TED Talks video that we were unable to play. I encourage everyone to watch that. That's considered part of your workday. So please take time when you have some minutes during your workday to watch that. This is just the beginning of this conversation and this work. This is not only continuous improvement for the agency, it's for our individual selves, and try to become better people and better friends and neighbors and colleagues. And then obviously that will impact positively our students as we work through these and start better understanding these issues. Dr. Cleveland, thank you so much for your time today. And I know this is just the beginning of our work with you, and we really appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you all for your time and, addressing this. And, it's a lot of work, but, we'll get on it. And you all have people in the State Department that can do a lot of this stuff. So I'm just happy to facilitate it. And whatever I can do, just let me know. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
All right.
As everyone knows, we had planned on ending at 3. We're going to try to end around 3:30. This has been a great discussion. As long as we don't, I'm okay with going to 4 o'clock if we still have questions. We do want to have a hard stop at 4. If we end up going that long, because the governor is having a press conference today. Thanks everyone. And if you have to get off the call for another meeting or other obligations, know that this is recorded and you can go back and watch the remainder of the call during your work time. When you come back into the office, you can watch it recorded. So we will go back up, and next, Tony, we'll do the return to work tips with Keith McCrae and Rita Beelan. And also thank Lynn. I guess that's Lynn's and several from her team, Lynn and Angela Smith as well.
Absolutely. And I believe Keith and Rita, they're signed in. Are they ready to go?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Do you want to drive the PowerPoint, or you want me to access it for you?
Go ahead and access it, and I'll just have you go through the slides.
Perfect. You should be good to go.
All righty. Well, good afternoon, Team KDE. I hope everyone is safe and doing well. Everyone, as we transition back to the 300 Sauer building, Team KDE is making extensive efforts to help in ensuring employee safety. We have assembled guidelines to help raise awareness and inform employees of safety measures to follow for everyone's well-being. Next slide, Tony. Let's stay safe and healthy. To start, safety begins with you. Everyone must be committed to following protocol to help ensure success in this endeavor. As always, let's do our very best to keep ourselves and our neighbors safe. Next slide. The health assessment form. The health assessment form is available online, or paper copies are located on the table in the lobby area. Prior to arrival, employees should evaluate themselves and determine if symptoms such as a fever of 100.5 or greater, cough, shortness of breath, chills, muscle pain, sore throat, new loss of taste or smell, or gastrointestinal symptoms are present. In this event, if symptoms are present, please contact your supervisor before entering the building. The health assessment form shall be given to your supervisor and completed at the end of the work week. Next slide, Tony. Mask usage. Everybody has heard about mask usage lately. Well, mask usage is a priority. My mask protects you and your mask protects me. Employees should always be wearing face masks properly at all times. This will include leaving the employee's vehicle and entering the building. Elevators, hallways, restrooms, and stairwells are also places an employee will need to wear a face mask. Please review and follow the mandatory mask policy that the personnel cabinet emailed to each employee. It is very informative and very detailed. Next slide. Thermometers. Employees should be taking their own temperature prior to the arrival at the 300 Sauer building. In the event you didn't take your temperature before arrival, thermometers are available. They are located behind the security desk area. Please review and follow the mandatory temperature check policy for employees, contractors, and visitors. All materials will be provided to you shortly in case you have missed them. Next slide. Hand washing. Washing your hands. We've all heard this. It is one of the very best hygienic means of protecting ourselves and others. Hand washing should be done on a very frequent basis. It helps aid in preventing germ spread. Be sure to use plenty of soap and wash hands for at least 20 seconds. Thoroughly dry your hands. Hand sanitizer. Employees should be using hand sanitizer where hand washing is not available. There are many hand sanitizer stations located on each floor for convenience. With all the surface areas within the building, using hand sanitizer is another defense against germs. The next slide is conducting meetings. Anytime we can communicate through technology rather than in-person communication at work, we are helping ourselves and our neighbors to stay safe. Employees should be utilizing Microsoft Teams, Zoom, or teleconference meetings. Next, we want to talk about training room preparation. In the event a training room is required, the organizer of the training will need to contact HR after approval is given. This gives time for supplies management to occur. The organizer of the training will disinfect all tables and chairs before and after the training. Social distancing measures as well as healthy at work directives will need to be followed. This may affect how many attendees could attend. Additionally, masks must always be worn. Next, we will talk about training room sign-in registration. Employees will need to complete a health assessment and temperature check before entering a training room. Additionally, hand sanitizer shall be used. The organizer of the training session will mark names off a roster by having employees show their badge. Spacing tape will be located on the floor to ensure social distancing measures are being followed. Next, we have the restriction of common areas. Everyone must reduce the amount of congregating in areas such as waiting rooms, break rooms, collaboration areas, and so on. Social distancing measures are always a priority. Always remain 6 feet apart from any individual if possible, and be sure to wear your mask. Next slide, please. Elevators. Elevator usage is limited to 3 individuals at a time. Be sure to spread out as far as possible to help ensure social distancing measures. It is encouraged to take the stairs. The next slide we're going to talk about is restricted share travel. When using a state vehicle for work, it is encouraged to ride in separate vehicles. This helps keep germs from spreading. In the event employees riding separately is unavoidable, face masks must be used to help in the social distancing endeavor. Additionally, the driver of the vehicle should disinfect the vehicle after each trip. Finally, in the next slide, for more information, please visit the Life at the 300 building or KDE's COVID-19 webpage. As always, if you have any questions, please send them to me, or you can email HR as well, and we can open it up for a few questions. I know everybody's wanting to get, or is wanting to move this rather quickly, so I can answer a few questions if that's all right.
Hi, this is David Couch. I probably need to make a correction to one of your slides. The product standards we have for virtual meetings in the KDE agency is Microsoft Teams and Google Meet, not Zoom. So that just need to be corrected on that slide. Those are the only two products for virtual meetings that KDE staff is leading and initiating that they should be using.
All righty. Thank you, David.
All right. So going to the soapbox, is the health assessment form turned in at the end of the week or the end of the pay period?
We have our guru, Miss Rita Beelan, who should be with us, that can answer that question.
The health assessment should be sent to the supervisor at the end of each pay period. You can also copy your HR payroll administrator on that email so that it does come to HR.
Okay. And then will the self-health assessment for employees be on the CRIS system at some point?
That we really don't know, since that is a form that was developed by the personnel cabinet and that process put in place by them. We haven't been told whether or not that's going to eventually go to the CRIS system. So until then, we do have the paper forms.
Okay. The next question is, do we have any kind of indication as to when KDE may be asked to return in full?
Well, and that's a good question, and that's something that leadership is still looking at. We get so much literature, documentation from the governor's office that can change on a daily basis. We want, to say the least, we want to make sure that everyone is safe and healthy. Right now, we're still encouraging people to telecommute, but no details have been given as far as any numbers or the estimated time that we're going to be in the building at this point.
Okay.
I'll add to that. I don't see us coming back, all of us coming back into the building any sooner than September 1st. And I even think would be too aggressive. That's just my personal, how I'm seeing things play out. And as long as we continue to be doing good work remotely, which we are, we had the soft opening on July 15th. It will probably be a gradual progression as maybe as much as you like teleworking, you don't like being with your spouse or significant other or kids all the time and so maybe now you need to go back into the office. Maybe we're starting to see some of that, but so we probably will be a gradual arrival back at the office over time is probably how that's going to happen.
All right, the next question, will KDE employees still have the option to continue working remotely if COVID is still a concern for them?
Yes, definitely as through September 14th, and there's no reason to believe that Dr. Glass or anything would change after that. We know COVID is just not going to miraculously go away tomorrow. And so, as I said, I think it will be a gradual return as we all get more accustomed to the procedures that Keith just outlined and have a greater comfort level. And also what is driving this and our ability to keep doing this is the fact that everyone has been doing such a good job with it, and they're being very acting in good faith and really giving great services to the Commonwealth from home. So we got to keep that up and keep doing that, and we will come back together as a team when safety allows it, and we can do so in a way that completely reduces or there is no risk.
Okay. Okay, any other questions from Team KDE? Please put them in the soapbox for me and I will get to those. I don't see any on this particular topic or any others. It is open for general Q&A as well.
Hey, Tony, this is Robin. I want to thank Keith and Rita and Angela and Lynn and the folks in resource management for putting this together and sharing with our KDE staff. Although we do continue to highly encourage telecommuting for all the reasons Commissioner Brown has stated, we wanted to make sure that at any time if an employee would like to come back to the building for all the reasons we've discussed, that we would be ready and have our safety measures in place for you. If you even come back for just a day, I would encourage you to really start practicing these safety measures. I know myself, I've been in the building a couple of times, and it will take a little bit of an adjustment in making sure that you always have that mask on when you go through the common areas, the elevators, the collaboration spaces until you get to your workstation. So it will take a little bit of practice as we start coming back into the building. I also want to just also thank Rita Beelan. Rita is retiring, and so another person from the Office of Finance and Operations staff who has been with us for a very long time. And I always talk about Rita as taking care of all of us, whether it's our timesheets or our insurance or all the other things that she does on our behalf. So I really want to thank her today for all that she's done for the department and for KDE overall. So thank you, Rita.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Can't say enough about Rita, about your work over the years and all the things you have done behind the scenes to support us. So thank you.
Okay, got a couple more questions coming in. Shout out, thank you to Keith and HR. Is the health assessment form necessary when you pick up something over the weekend and nobody is there?
The health assessment form should be filled out anytime that you come into the building, regardless of when it is or however long you're going to be in the building. It really needs to be completed.
Okay. Will masks be available if someone forgets their personal mask?
I can answer that question. Currently, we have given individuals who have responded that they are going to be in the building to HR. We have distributed PPE out to those individuals to have that is adequately stocked. So PPE will be on hand.
So where, if people are coming in and forget their mask, where would they find a mask or be able to access it in the building?
Oh, okay. At the lobby area and at the desk, there are masks available for the individuals who did not bring their mask with them. I would encourage you to, was one of those measures of practicing, make sure that you have your mask, but in case that you didn't have it, they will be available at the lobby area.
Okay. Okay, I'm looking to see if there's lots of congratulations coming in to Rita. Lots of people saying they're going to miss you. I think that's all we have so far.
All right, thank you. It's good information, Keith and Rita and Lynn and your team. Thank you for all that you all continue to do to support us. Tony, any other general questions on Subbox that we missed? This is we have a few more minutes. We can take some additional questions.
Yes, there is a question wanting to know if we are, and Kevin, do you anticipate a mandate from the governor for schools to begin virtually, given the rise in COVID numbers or the number of COVID cases that are on the rise?
I don't, that can't be predicted. It's possible. If you've heard the governor on the press conferences, he's mentioned or alluded to the fact several times that schools can go back to in-person classes, assuming that all of these measures are, and I'm putting words in his mouth, but generally said if all the measures are faithfully adopted and observed by Kentuckians, face masks, social distancing, not going to hot spots on vacation and coming back without quarantining. And so he was mentioning all those things because one of the goals, not only reopen the economy, but one of the goals is to be able to, we all want to be back in in-person classes. And if those things are not effective, or if we're not abiding by those restrictions faithfully, then we're probably not going to see a decrease or now even a plateau of cases. And if that doesn't happen, or if we're in a spike situation, which the last few days we have been in a spike, then that does threaten the ability of us to continue on with these various opening plans. And it's possible, we could see the governor bring the superintendents together again. Now, we have more tools at our disposal now than we did in the spring, in that we have contact tracing, we have, better data, we have more testing, so we're able to see that, maybe there's a hotspot of cases in one part of the state, or maybe even in one community within a large county. And so that's why the relationship between local superintendents and their local health department is so important. Maybe that we would be able to pinpoint closures. And obviously, if we have an active case in a school, we're going to be able to use contact tracing to hopefully pinpoint students that may and staff that have been exposed, but then not necessarily close the entire school. Those are tools we did not have in the spring. So while at one end of the spectrum, a recommendation from the governor to all districts to close to in-person classes is possible, particularly if the virus continues to spike every day, we also know that we have more tools available to us without reaching that end of the spectrum by being a little bit more surgical in our approach. So long answer, is possible. It's not no really way to know other than to watch the trend of cases.
Okay. Looking to see if there's anything else I'm missing. We do have a slide about the virtual town hall tomorrow. If you want to talk just briefly about that, just to make sure everybody's aware about that. You should be able to see it, hopefully. I thought. It's been a long day. All right, let's see. It should be sharing there. So just to kind of, do you want to provide a little overview of that?
Yes. If you see on the slide there with information regarding the town hall, the virtual town hall that we're having, and the primary audience for educators and staff across the state, school staff. Obviously, though, open to the public, open to KDE staff, open to superintendents, everyone. But we really wanted to focus a town hall type format and give very high level information about the reopening guidance, the 5 areas of reopening that we collaborated with the Department of Public Health on, reopening schools, and also a high-level overview of all the guidance documents issued by KDE to date. So teachers, administrators, bus drivers will know where to find those documents, because there's a document for everything. There's a guidance document for everything, for buses, for custodial, for cafeteria, everything. And so we want to make sure that all employees are aware of that. Districts are already doing a good job of getting that information out there, but we just wanted to provide a state level option for people to be able to see where that guidance is, to learn more about the reasoning for the masks. And in case they are still have some questions about it, Dr. Stack will be on there to provide a great overview from public health as why we are doing this and how important it is to reduce the spread and to hopefully flatten the curve and keep that going and make it start going down again. And so that was the reason we are doing this. It should be a 2-hour town hall, and then we will have time for questions that will be submitted through the Go Soapbox. So feel free to use the KDE Media portal to tune in as well.
All right, and then we have some important dates that are just coming up for August. So those are your next dates for conversation with Commissioner and TeamKDE, which you will be getting invites. If they're not already out on your calendar, they will be shortly.
Anything else? Any other questions, Tony? If not, we're
I think that's it. I don't see, unless somebody else has lots of thanks. Lots of people appreciated Dr. Cleveland's presentation, and no, I don't see anything. Oh, wait, there is, I did see something in here that snuck on by that I did not see. And this might have been for Dr. Cleveland, but I think it's going to probably be more for KDE. And it's the need for KDE to further address other issues, including gender equity and LGBTQ equity, in addition to racial equity.
very good points. Completely agree with that, and thank you for that comment.
So I think that that is the only other one that I have missed. And everything else should be addressed. So again, we will get this PowerPoint out along with the Dr. Cleveland's registration information for the thing tomorrow. And then in the PowerPoint, we'll have the link to the video that we were not able to share due to the bandwidth issues at my home.
All right, I want to thank everyone for sticking with us. We're 41 minutes past, but these are important topics, and thank you for joining, and thank you for watching if you're watching this in a delayed format. Everyone have a great rest of the day, rest of the week, and don't forget, if you have time, to tune into the governor's press conference. Usually always a information or a question that elicits information from the governor on K-12 schools. That's why it's important to watch. So thank you so much, and please stay safe.